I'm talking with Raymel Francisco, another participant
Yes.
of the Orange Vibe Jam, and we're just going to find a little bit more about him and what he has built for the Orange Vibe Jam. Raymel, thanks for speaking with me. Maybe we can just start with your development background because you seem to be a little bit more experienced than those I've previously interviewed.
Thanks, Phil. Thanks for inviting me for this interview. First of all, I'm Raymel. So right now I do indie hacking, and then before I have a TV startup experience also with a few things. And mostly my coding background is mostly software, web development, and then I work for a software development agency for more than 5 years before I started doing all of these things.
Okay. And then what drew you to vibe coding?
Yup. So the very interesting part of vibe coding is before the term is even coined. Because I think Andre Karpati, he coined that term just a few months ago. So it's mostly 2025 when he coined that term. But even before that, ever since the release of Code 3.5, I was one of the few people who experimented with it. And then I have a client that we did a test run on that kind of thing. So what we did is a clone of ChatGPT. So that is what we first tried. And then we tried doing it on Cloud artifacts, the feature of Cloud back then where you can preview the code. It is, I think it's before, way before Cursor existed, way before Windsurf, way before Lovable, way before V0 became popular. So that's mostly the beginnings. And it's mostly last year, it's July, I think, 2024. So it's a long history for me. And then when I realized that, okay, people are calling it vibe coding, then, okay, this is mostly what we do before. And I've been experimenting with most of the time.
And what tools are you using now for vibe coding?
Yeah. I'm just using a lot of tools, like whatever, whenever gets the job done. So I mostly use it. So right now I have my main editor in Cursor. And then I also have Line, which is the open source counterpart of a Cursor. And the good thing about Line is I'm also using RuCode. It's a form of Line. They have more flexibility in terms of handling context. And then for prototyping, I mostly use Lovable as of the moment. Like for me, hands down, Lovable is very good in prototyping. If you want to start an application from scratch, like the very first step, you just push it to Lovable. Try Lovable, and then after that, I try to continue it with Cursor and the finished product.
Right. You start your development on Lovable because it creates prototypes better, probably has better UI than some other tools. And then you bring that code into Cursor to complete it. Is that right?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. And then what types of apps or websites were you developing before vibe coding? Because I know your submissions are all games. So just for a little background, but what type of things were you developing previously?
Yeah, it's funny because I never did some game dev before. Like I think most of the games that, or the closest thing that I have ever came close to building a game is educational app for kids. If you can call it a game, so that's it. So that's why vibe coding really interests me a lot. And that's because most of the apps that I built before is mostly full stack, mostly web. And then before I start working for a software agency, what we mostly do in uni in college is mostly some applications, systems, things like that. So that's mostly the experience that I have for vibe coding.
Did you have any aspirations to develop games before vibe coding?
It's just that, but after vibe coding, I think maybe it's time.
Interesting. So vibe coding really opened up your
Imagination.
okay, excellent. And then I noticed that your submissions are under the name Pseudo Kid. Can you give us some background on the origin story of that handle?
Oh, Yeah, for that name, it's my ex handle. So x.com/Pseudo Kid. Actually, I don't have any history with it. Just during that
Okay.
time when, yeah. Yeah, when I built a Dex account, I just saw, okay, this sounds very the pseudocode,
Okay.
add some, let's just remix the word and add some kid. And then, okay, it's free. Username is
Okay.
free. And okay, that's it.
Well, that's interesting. It actually is an interesting origin from pseudocode, play off pseudocode to pseudokid. Yeah, it's great. So let's talk about a little bit about what you built. You actually submitted a couple games.
Yeah.
Can you talk us through that process? How did those ideas originate? And then a little bit of how you started building those games, maybe even the prompts that you used to
Oh,
start.
yup. So for those games, I think the very first thing is when I saw Peter Level's, like the OG in the app, when I saw him build his flight simulator game, so
Right.
I saw, oh, it's just possible. And then I didn't think too much about it until 2 weeks later when I realized that he's actually getting sponsors. So I said maybe there's something in here something to explore. So that's actually mostly the reason why I tried to check it out. And then they say that sometimes you just try to explore, you just came into something because of how interesting it is, and then after that you just stayed. So that's what happened to me. So when I developed my first game, it's a very basic Western cowboy inspired shooting game. And then it's funny because I started it just for the sake of maybe I can also get some sponsors. But then we came for some of for the money, and then you stayed for the game. Like you stayed because the experience is great. So that's what happened to me. And then that's the reason why after the cowboy shooter game, there's also more games that followed. Wait, I'm not sure if maybe it's cut off, but for after Cowboy Shooter, I rested for 2 weeks, and then because I thought the momentum has died. And then that is 2 weeks later, that is when Peter Nivels introduced the Vibe Jam Hackathon, the
Right.
very first hackathon for Vibe coded games. And then I checked, why is there a hackathon? And then I realized, oh, it's because there's already a lot of games that have been built within the 2 weeks that
Right.
I am disconnected from the space. And it's insane. It's already becoming a movement. So that's when I realized, okay, I should have stopped. And that's when I realized that, okay, might as well improve my game, the cowboy game, submit another game, which is a cyberpunk inspired. It's hard to describe, but it's mostly a cyberpunk simulator.
Right.
You get in a car, you get in a motorcycle, you try to use your mouse to connect the portals, and then it's very interesting because the portals also has a story. Like before the Vibe Jam hackathon ended, like I think a week before that, Peter Lebels and I think it's Marty, I forgot his surname. They introduced another feature for the games. Like they add another twist. It's the metaverse thingy. It's like a web ring, like a game portal where you're in one game. You have a portal for the Vibeverse. We call it Vibeverse or Metaverse. And then you can just go to that portal, and then all of a sudden you're transported into another game, and so on and so forth. And for me, it's a very cool feature. It's very amazing because it just connects everything together, and it just adds to the community aspect of the vibe
Sure.
coding as a whole. And then I saw another hackathon, which is I think it's Memento who suggested it to me. And it's the Orange Vibe Hackathon. So that is right now. I think it's the hackathon with you guys. And then that's when I realized, okay, so hackathons are still happening, and then just started from the movement of Peter Levels, and then there's more hackathons coming. So why not join? I think it's a very good opportunity.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm doing right now. So I submitted my first two games there on Orange Vibe, and then last night I actually built two more games. Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. This is it's more of a weekend project. The first one is a 3D Tetris. just a known concept. And then the other one is it's a gremlin glitch. Yeah, that's the
Oh,
name.
okay.
Gremlin glitch. Yep. I think
Yeah,
you
I
saw.
saw, I
Yeah.
saw those this morning. Yeah, I played around with them.
Yeah.
I know that you integrated Vibeburst into your first two submissions, but we are trying to accomplish the same thing with the integration of the Orange ID. With that Orange ID, you can share audiences with all the other, and not just audiences with all the other projects, but data as well. And then you would be able to do more collaborative things like questing across multiple games for reward. Levels.io is doing it with the metaverse, and we're doing it with authentication and a backend and for analytics. Your cyberpunk game, actually, the while it's a very simple game, the production quality is quite high. How did you accomplish that? How did you accomplish that? Because myself have been using Replit, and the prototypes are usually just like these gray boxes and 2D sprites. Like, how did you accomplish the graphic quality of your cyberpunk game?
Yup. So for the process, there's a 3D tool for AI 3D tool. I think it's Rodin AI. It's also
Mhm.
called Hyper 3D AI. So then also other people using Meshi, I think.
Right.
Yeah, the name is right.
That's correct. Yeah.
And but for my cyberpunk game, I have used pre-made. Like it's a pre-made 3D meshes, like for the environment, like the procedural city,
Mm.
and then also for the call it the cyber truck, and also for the motorcycle. And part of the reason is while Hyper 3D is good in doing some 3D like 3D assets, they really lack in details. Like, or maybe it's just me, maybe a skill issue on my end, but I find it hard to prompt a very good 3D asset that is very high in detail.
Although those assets that you did use are perfectly suited for a
Oh yes.
web
Yeah,
deployment.
you just need to, I think, attribute the creator. I got them from Sketchfab.
Got it. But how did you get them? How did you actually get them into the game? Did you just upload it into your into Cursor and tell it to?
Oh, yeah, I did it. Yeah, because mostly in web development, you usually put it on a CDN. Like, yeah, you can do. Right now, I'm using Cloudinary, but you can also use something from AWS from the cloud providers that we have. It's better that way versus bundling it with your website because your website loads slower when you have those gigantic 3D assets
Right.
loaded with.
Oh, interesting. So it's pulling those assets from the cloud server.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. Interesting. That's a good tip for users that may want to improve the graphics in their own builds without increasing the cost, the deployment. Okay.
Yep.
You have been prolific in developing games when submitting them. If we just go back to your development process, like how do you develop these ideas? Do you start with, is it just something that you've had in mind, or do you chat with ChatGPT to come up with ideas? Like, what's your process?
Yep. So it's more of a both, but right now it's more on ChatGPT.
Mm.
Mostly ChatGPT, and then I also use Grok for most of the ideas because sometimes you have to do some deep research and something, and Grok is really good at that. So sometimes you need to add some research, and then when it comes to planning, it is very helpful to use ChatGPT or Grok before you feed it to any of your vibe coding tool. For example, before you feed it to Lovable or Cursor or Windsurf or whatever you use, V0, it's really way better. Like it's way smoother experience to have your plan everything, put it in a prompt, and then just right before you tell your AI coders to code it.
Mm. Yeah, I've learned, like, I am completely new to vibe coding myself, and I learned that from a friend of mine. And yeah, I think that's the best way to go if you have ChatGPT or Grok. help you not only conceptualize your idea, but break it down into more manageable steps so you don't
Yep.
over context the editor, right?
Yes, exactly.
Now, if I looked at my Twitter feed and my LinkedIn feed, I see a lot of more experienced coders disregarding vibe coding, saying that it's just a trend and will fade away shortly. You, as an experienced coder before you came to vibe coding, what is your opinion of that?
Okay. Yeah. For me, mostly they're right. They're right in some ways because definitely vibe coding is a trend. It is a trend. But the thing is, sometimes you have to look deeper the opportunities that it builds. And not only the current opportunities, but also the opportunities that it will make in the future. So for me, that's the very straight answer that I can give.
Interesting. So right now you're seeing vibe coding as a trend, but maybe just the start of a bigger, not a bigger trend, but a bigger movement.
Yes, not only a bigger movement, but also the fact that people, and also not only people, but businesses and individuals alike, they're all checking it out. It's a good sign for me. It's always a good sign.
If we can just talk a little bit about the integration of the Orange ID,
Oh, and I,
how easy or how difficult was that process for you?
yeah. So actually, my mentor helped me a lot in the process. So I just asked him. So he's a chat GPT for the Orange ID. That's like my chat GPT in a sense because he really responds a lot very quickly, and then he responds in a lot of detail when I ask him something. But when I think the learning curve is very, how do you call it? It's not hard. It's more of you just have to read
Right.
in order to be able to integrate it. But after that, it's very easy to integrate. So like last night, I was able to on the two games very easily. And then my first two games also it just took me a few hours to figure it out, but it's all good. I think there's a code on GitHub. Like, yeah, so the code on GitHub, that's for me the most reliable thing to follow.
Okay. Excellent.
So, yep.
Is there anything about vibe coding that surprised you when you started?
Actually, the fact that it can build apps, it's already very surprising. So that's the first thing. Yep. Like before, and it's true, like before, if you want to build a web app, you have to go through the process. You have to go through the hours of planning and then even designing. You also do the design. There's a reason why boilerplates exist. In the hacking space, there's this thing they call boilerplates where they just sell pre-made code for example, SaaS, like the one with the Mark Lu, where he has got some huge revenue from it. Also, there's this open source template, and then there's also guys like Creative Team, the company that builds very polished, bootstrap made templates like dashboards for your websites. That is what people are using before if they want to have something done very quickly or they just want to get started. But right now, vibe coding allows us to be not entirely free from those boilerplates. You can just try to use your imagination in some way, try to carve what your final app should look like, how your app should behave. For me, it's one of the most surprising things because it's not only it gives the flexibility, but even I also the accuracy. Like even if the code is not as accurate as you want it to be, if you try to compare it to what we have few months ago, and then even to what we have last year, which is nothing, it's very amazing
Yeah.
already.
I guess ultimately, what does vibe coding mean to you?
For me, I think it's more of a two things, like the two sides of a coin. There's this creative side, and then there's also the business side of it, like
Mm.
the economic aspect. And for me, for the creative side, and I said it to my friends before, like before we're just playing games, but in the near future, kids and even adults, they will be able to make games that they want to play. So instead of just playing games, they can also make games that they want to play.
Right.
So that's how I want to see the future of vibe coding in terms of games. And in terms of the economic side, business aspect of it, it just increases productivity. Mm. While I don't believe that will eliminate all the developers, like what people are saying, it will drastically change the landscape of how the tech jobs are,
Lovely.
or the tech jobs are right now. Like there will be new roles, and then it will be a very fast switch from the old roles that we have. And then aside from that, it also empowers entrepreneurs, solo builders, which is a part of. And it's really cool because like right now, I have 3 or 4 projects that are in development, and then I also have a few more in the validation stage, and then there's also a few more in just being an idea, like ideation stage. And that's because of AI. Like for example, they are project ideas that are still in idea. And when you think of that, it's mostly because they're just in ChatGPT or in Grok. So they're still in the planning stage. So that's what I meant. And then when you have projects that they are in development stage, oh, it means they already reached the stage of they are in my vibe code tools already. AI editors like probably Cursor, or they might probably in my Lovable workspaces or V0, things like that. And then there's also the validation too. Like those were the ideas that get past, or they're already way past the chat GPT stage, like the planning stage. And now I'm on my way on getting ways to validate it, whether to Reddit or asking friends, asking people. And I'm still using AI tools for that in some way. So that's mostly the entire process of a solopreneur right now. And it's crazy because AI just empowered everyone. Like it just empowered everyone to be a solo builder, solo
Right.
maker. And if you have an idea, you could just plan it with AI. You can validate it with AI, and then you can also build it with AI. And that's the power of it.
So just to summarize, like formally, you would have to spend a lot of resources in time, money, manpower to produce a single app. And now you can just at a whim start generating ideas, if not the app itself, with AI.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Yes. It's more than the app. Yeah. It's also the idea. Like, or even for the real businesses. Yeah. It's crazy because sometimes I'm chatting with ChatGPT or Grok, and then that is when I learn new things about some real businesses that, it's more than an app, more than software.
Yep. Yep. Interesting. Okay. Thank you very much for giving us your time and letting us in on your process.
Yep.
Good luck with the Vibe Jam. And yeah, man, if you keep developing stuff, keep submitting it. One of them's got to
Yeah.
hit, right?
Yeah, I have more ideas. Yeah, it's getting more fun at this point. So really appreciate the opportunity for this interview, and also for letting me be part of the Orange Vibe Jam.
Yeah, of course, man. Like the success of our platform depends on creators like yourself.